again, and welcome to Canal Sidings for video number 22. Well, the new workshop arrangement is working quite nicely. I'm still having a bit of trouble finding things every now and again, but that's to be expected. Have a minor problem in that with all the moving around of the TV and all the other electrical bits and pieces, the Inglethwaite layout has now lost two DCC sections of track. They're just dead, and of course Canal Sidings is now right in the way, so I'm going to have to spend a bit of time sooner rather than later and lift out Canal Sidings and find out why those two sections of track are now dead, because without that I can't play trains, not on Inglethwaite anyway. So that's one problem I've had. Canal Sidings is now almost back up and running. I've just still got a couple of other bits and pieces to do to make it work again, and then I'll be able to get back on it and do some more videos. And to start with, what we'll do is we'll go back to the big warehouse that I was building, which I haven't made any progress on since the last time you saw it. But that's where we'll go back when we go back to Canal Sidings. What I want to do in this video is do a bit more of an introduction and talk to you about my new venture, which is my post-privatisation modern image diesel layout, which is definitely now going to be called North Grove Stabling Point. It's going to be built as a mini TMD. It will have a two-road locomotive shed at one end and a single road repair shed at the other end, and diesel refuelling facilities, some fuel tanks, and that's fuel storage tanks, and somewhere for wagons to be brought in, tank wagons to be brought in to replenish those tanks, and there will be several areas where locomotives can stand, and I'll be able to have a lot of locomotives on show, and as I intend to fit all of them eventually with sound, they'll be able to sit there ticking over with their lights on, just the way I see a lot of other model railways, and I've always felt that that would be a nice railway to have. And it will go through the back scene, which will be mostly a stone wall, and it will go through that off to the single road fiddle yard, which will work on a cassette principle, which I'll show you at the time that I start to install it. I've already built the cassettes. I built them originally for Inglethwaite before I had a locomotive storage area on that, an MPD, and before I had the extension in the garage, which is now the fiddle yard. And I needed to be able to swap my locos. The layout as it stood then would barely hold 10 locos, and it was then full up with them. So I had to have a facility for changing locos over and even being able to turn locos around so that I could run trains with different motive power. And I built this cassette system to hold my collection of then about 30 locos, which obviously wouldn't all fit. Now the cassette system, which consists of some 30 odd cassettes now, is much less used, so I'm going to make use of it on North Grove as the actual fiddle yard, and it still means that I don't have to touch the locomotives very often. But we'll talk about that when we get there. The layout is definitely going to be 6 feet long. I have capitulated and decided to make it 6 feet long, not 5 feet, and just over 1 foot wide. It's going to be 14 inches deep, if you like. The baseboards for it are on order. They're on quite a long lead time, around 7 weeks, and so they won't be here till the end of May. But of course, one of the first things to do when you get the baseboards is lay the track, which I've decided is going to be Pico Code 75. I'm not going to build it myself, because I did mention some time ago when I first mooted North Grove, that I wanted it to be a quick build, relatively speaking, compared to Canal Sidings. I don't want it to take as long. Canal Sidings is my main venture, and I'm enjoying building that with all the warehouses and factories around the back of it and such, and I want to continue with Canal Sidings and finish it. But that is a much longer term project. North Grove I want to be a much quicker project, and for a start it's only got 2 buildings plus a retaining wall. The retaining wall is going to be from Langley, and will be all the way along the back, and all I'll have to do is just paint that. And other than those 2 buildings and a couple of fuel storage tanks, a refueling point, which I've got a kit for anyway. I've got a Nightwing kit for that, and perhaps an office, which may well be one of those porter cabin type buildings that you see on so many layouts these days. Scale model scenery make a nice one, and I may well use theirs, with perhaps the odd modification. When I get the kit I may decide I can make it look a little better. But what I'm going to talk about today, because I need these before I can actually lay the track, because I must make sure they'll fit, I'm going to talk about the 2 buildings, the 2 main structures on the layout, which will be the single road repair shed and the 2 road running shed. And for these I'm going to use a Scale Seeds kit, but in my usual way I'm not going to build it as the Scale Seeds kit. I'll just lift that up there so that you can see it a little better. This can be built as 2 road as shown there, or as a single road version. I shall be building one of each, and in my usual way what I've decided to do is to modify it slightly. Now that will be very slight because I'm building it to look and be exactly as it is shown there, but with a few added details. This piece here, let me get it back up again. This piece here is actually meant to be what's called siding. It's that square box section stuff that you see on lots of buildings and a lot of modern industrial buildings these days. And there's also some more of it between the pillars above the windows along the sides. I need to make mine like this one with an extension, so it's double that length. That'll make it 350 millimeters, and that puts even more siding here further back and on the other end. And both buildings are going to be the same length and have all that siding on. The other thing is that this roof is absolutely flat. It's just textured cardboard or textured paper stuck on cardboard, and I'm not impressed by it. The brickwork is fine. I'm going to use the Scale Seeds brickwork and stick it on just like Scale Seeds would stick it on, not just like you would stick it onto a Scale Seeds kit, but I'm not going to use the method that they use for siding or for the roof. What I'm going to use for that, for both the siding and the roof, is this stuff. Now this is a Wills kit. It's what do they call it? They call it corrugated box steel and corners, SSMP 225, and that is this material, which I hope you can see if I bring it up there. It's quite deeply recessed, just like the box sections you get on many buildings, and they're normally grey or blue. I'm going to go for grey, not this colour. I shall be painting this. And in the kit you get 4 sheets. Now in order to do what I need to do, which is the roofs of the 2 buildings, I do intend to use it like that, and then it will come down to the sides a bit like this. And in order to do that I've had to buy 5 kits of this, which should be enough to do the whole job. You also get these corner pieces and flat pieces for joining it. why they've moulded this in white and this in grey. I'm not aware that they use grey for the joining pieces. It's, sorry, not aware they use a different colour, should I say, for the joining pieces. But there you go. So I've got to now modify this kit to take those very thick, they're 2mm thick, whereas the scale scenes parts were just 1mm with a millimetre stuck on the top. Okay, that's 2mm, but that means I've got to take out this piece here completely and these pieces here so that I can drop my siding in. As I said, what I want to do is I want to build this kit out of plasticard. I don't particularly enjoy building in card, especially when you've got to layer things together to make a thicker piece of card. I never seem to be able to get the edges to run parallel or straight with one another, so that the edges do this, and then when you stick the paper on it looks awful. So, and I've not found a way of straightening it afterwards. Rubbing it on what do you call it, abrasive paper just makes the cardboard go furry. It doesn't really help it, whereas with plastic card I can cut it out accurately with my silhouette cutter, and I can then once it's glued together I can true the edges up perfectly by rubbing them on a hard block of abrasive paper. So to that end I have redesigned the way the kit goes together to allow it to be built in plasticard. And essentially, apart from having to cut out the pieces there where the siding goes, essentially what I've done is I've redrawn the whole kit. Sounds a lot of work, but actually I can import the PDF file straight from such scale scenes straight into Inkscape, and Inkscape automatically turns it into a vector drawing. So I throw away all the bits of it that I don't want, like all the words that are written on it and etc., and end up just with the outline, which I can cut out. And that is what I've done. And here is an example of a sheet that is now cut. As you can see, it is cut. It hasn't gone all the way through, but it nearly is all the way through. This is 20 thou plasticard. My silhouette cutter will cut 15 thou all the way through. That is as deep as it will go. It will not cut 20 thou all the way through. So this 20 thou has not been cut all the way through and needs to be scored. And you probably can see from this that this piece here is one of the ends and the other one is interleaved with it there. That's for the two road, and here is one of the ends for the single road. I've just, scale scenes wasn't like this, I've just moved everything that I want from the same material into the same place. The reason it's on black plasticard is because I want to light it from inside, and I'm not going to paint any of the plasticard, I'm going to put paper over it. I'm going to use the scale scenes brick because it does look good, and I'm going to use all their internal wall coverings, and light will shine through white plasticard with just paper over it. Black plasticard, however, is completely opaque. No light comes through it at all. So there's black plasticard in all the walls somewhere. The end walls, which are these, are made up entirely of black plasticard. And I've had to cut two of those, and there's another one in the pile that I've got. So that's one that I've cut. As I say, here's one. Here, the other one is actually already cut out, and it's here. So I've actually proven that I can cut them out very easily. That took me about another 5 minutes to take that whole sheet and cut it out like this, because a lot of it you can just snap. You can just score and snap. And so, sorry, I've just lost a piece. I've confused myself for a sec there. There should be two of these. There's one gone missing somewhere. It's probably on the floor. But yes, it took me no time at all to just get those after the silhouette cutter had cut them. So that was 20 thou plastic card. I've also cut the window pieces from 10 thou plastic card. Not using Canal Sidings windows, but I've used the plans of their windows, and I've cut a whole side in 10 thou plastic card, which will be sandwiched in between larger pieces, which I haven't actually got any cut out yet. And for the glazing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a whole length, which will effectively be, I can find two that match. There we go. Those two will join together. Yep, those two join together. Is that right? Well, somehow like that. Anyway, I'll work it out eventually. They join together to make the double length, and for that whole length, which is 350 millimeters, I'm going to have a complete piece of glazing, which is going to be 1 millimeter thick. I'll go into why in a minute, but it's going to be 1 millimeter thick, and it should hold these rather delicate glazing bars solid, if I can manage to get them to stick to it. Again, lots of these. There are 8 of these because there are 2 buildings, 4 to each building. A couple of them have got doors in them, cutouts for doors. As I say, there are 8 of those, all cut out on the silhouette cutter, and that's 10 thou material. Be careful I don't break any of those. And I have also cut this stuff, which is 1 millimeter plastic card. If you can see, there are some cuts in that. This was on top of it, and these are the buttresses. I've got another sheet of these because there are lots of them, because Canal Sidings call for them to be cut from 2 millimeter thick card. So I've cut them from 1 millimeter thick plastic card, and I need to join 2 together. Here's one that I've snapped off. I haven't done anything to that. That has been cut by the silhouette cutter as far as it will go, and then simply snapped. So if I get hold of that, it's easiest to do it down here. Snapped off. Now I can put those 2 together. They are identical in size. I just need the edges cleaning up a little. They're identical in size, and now they make a 2 millimeter thick piece, which is exactly what's called for the buttresses. So that's 3 different thicknesses of plastic card, 2 that I've never cut before, one being 1 millimeter, the other being ½ millimeter, 40 thou and 20 thou respectively. And I have cut most of what I need out. Here's a black piece. As I said, there's black in all the sides. Here's a black piece that actually has the side pieces in it. Again, 20 thou. You can't snap this so easily, so I didn't do it in 40 thou. Two layers of 20 thou, as you can see. Another sheet there. There's some more buttresses there. Here, even more buttresses. They're the end buttresses. Here are the inner sides. I don't know if you can see the cuts in them, but they are there. More inner sides, and finally the last pack of more inner sides. I'm waiting for some black plastic card, and there will be another 3 sheets, or is it 4 sheets of that to cut, for I can't remember what parts they are. I think they're more of these sides. There will be 20 sheets of plastic card by the time I'm finished, but that doesn't cost me very much. From Station Road baseboards, where I always buy my plastic card, as I've said before, 10 thou plastic card is 37p a sheet. 20 thou plastic card is about 47p a sheet, or maybe 50p a sheet, maybe 50 or 60p a sheet, I can't remember. 1 millimeter plastic card is under £1 a sheet. You can double that and then add some if you go and buy Slater's plastic card, which is pretty much the same size. In fact, Slater's is 5 millimeters longer, It's that size, if I can get it in the picture, plus 5mm here. But for that you pay more than twice as much, significantly more than twice as much. Anyway, the way I intend to build the sides is there will be let me get rid of those. There will be an outer side made up of two pieces of black, two pieces like that but in black, sandwiched together, but with the tops cut out, ready to take the siding. Behind those will go one sheet of 10 thou material. Behind that will go the glazing material, which is going to be 1mm thick, and then behind that will be two sheets of the inner walls cut from 20 thou, making a total of 1mm. So that's 1mm of outside walls, 1mm of inside walls, 1mm of glazing, giving you 3mm. Exactly what scale scenes would come out to, built in their way with cardboard. So that way I maintain the thicknesses in the kit to try and ensure that it will fit together the same way as the scale scenes kit does. The ends, as we saw here, will be the same. The scale scenes ends are, I think, a total of 2mm thick, and that's exactly what I'm going to do to produce the is it 4mm thick, I think, or was it 3? Do you know, I can't remember, but I've built the ends such they come out the same as the scale scenes ones as well, and the result should be that the kit does fit together. But I do have to cut all of that siding in order to fit it into its position, and of course I'll have to spray it as well. And the roof will be built up out of that same siding, hopefully with a sheet of plastic card underneath it. It gives me something to stick it to rather than just having to stick it end on end. But I'll do it that way if I have to. The only other thing that I changed so far, obviously the roof was the biggest thing and the siding, but along here, I'll bring it up a bit closer, along here, sitting on top of the wall, is the guttering. Now the scale scenes kit just has that as a block of card, 2mm thick by 6mm wide, and with a paper wrap on it to try and make it look as if it's dirty. I decided that I didn't like that, so I'm going to make that from 2mm by 6mm channel, plastic channel, which I would normally buy from my door spring company. However, their channels are a bit of a letdown, because they're not parallel sided. You get the channel base and the sides, they do this, and they're really difficult to put straight. They're not very well made. So what I've bought is a couple of packs of evergreen. The other advantage of evergreen is that they are 14 inches long, which means that I will get the whole length of each building, the whole length of a building side out of one piece, so there'll be no join in it to give me any difficulties. So that's where I am, that's what I'm doing at the moment, and what I'm going to do now is go away and start to put some of this together and see whether it actually works. When my Station Road baseboards black plastic card arrives, I'll cut that out as well. I'll cut all the pieces out as I need them rather than all at once, and I'll come back when I've got something more to show on that. So bye for now. Right, I'm back. It's been quite a few days since the first part of this video, probably a week, and what I have now is the one side of the building done, nowhere near building it, completing the whole thing yet, but we have one side of the building here, and as you can see it has the buttresses on, which are made of plastic with scale scenes brick paper around, and the walls, which are the scale scenes brick paper on plastic. We have a door in there. I have the Wills rectangular siding in place, which I've sprayed grey with a primer. And if we turn it round, we have on the other side we have the scale scenes interior with the door replicated from this side, and I have the glazing in place, as you can see, and the interior buttresses, and it's quite flat, it stands up for itself, so the bottom of it is pretty good. The last job I need to do on here is smooth the top out, because that's where I've allowed everything that was a little bit in error, I've allowed it to all accumulate at the top. So what I'll have to do is get my little plate here and start to rub it down until we get it smooth, until we get rid of all the lumps and bumps. I know there's one there, which is why I'm happy to do it just there. That'll take quite a while, but eventually that'll be done, and then we can start looking at fitting the guttering, which was the stuff that I mentioned before, which is channel, which is evergreen, and I mistakenly said that that channel would do the full length. Well, it won't. I think I need it about another 5mm longer than that, so it won't do the full length. Best laid plans and all that. So I shall do it in two halves. I shall join it somewhere around about, a buttress out there. Just hack it off. I've got 6 pieces like this. I just need to spray the other ends, simply because I couldn't hold it still and spray the whole thing in one go. So I need to do the other end. You saw the windows in place, and that was how I did the windows. I just cut out a piece of card with holes in, laid it over the top, sprayed it with primer, and then that's the result. And you can see that the window bars are actually grey, not white. I hope you can see that anyway. The assembly technique that I used on this, it wasn't quite optimal. What I did was I took the glazing material, which is that side round, which incidentally is barely long enough to do the whole side of the building. In fact, yep, that is the full length of it. As you can see, it's barely long enough to get round there, to get along there. So what I had to do, and if I pick it up you can see it, you can see the sandwich here, and you can see in here we have 1mm of plasticard, the glazing, and then the little bit that you can't see is the 1/10 thou of window pane, window detail, and then we have this bit where the siding is, that's 2mm thick, and we have then the buttresses on top of that, which are each 2mm thick. The way I built that up, as I said, was probably not the optimal way, because what I did was I took the glazing material, which I cut as near as I could to the size of one side, and then I glued the window material to it, and at the same time added the extra end pieces that I needed where the glazing didn't go the full length. So then I ended up with a piece of glazing with 2 of these window sections and 2 pieces of 1mm plasticard to make it the full length. Then I put these other pieces that were already laminated on top of it. With hindsight, I think what I should have done was build the glazing material, the window material, onto the back of these pieces so it all aligned, and then stick the whole thing onto the glazing. And I shall try that the next side that I build. Anyway, we live and learn. That's one of those things. The other thing that I have here is an end, which is not complete. It requires a buttress down there, a buttress down there, and a buttress down there. This one I could fit, I just haven't made it yet, haven't assembled it yet. These two apparently scale scenes don't recommend you fit until you've got the roof on. And as my roof is different to theirs, I've got to be really careful. So I haven't done those buttresses at all. But how it fits is like that. I can't really show it very well because that will fall over. Let me try and hold that up with that. I don't know if this is going to work. It's not very easy to do this. Okay, it fits about like that. If I've got that at right angles, I'll be lucky. And there's a buttress goes on the outside. And I think what this is meant to be is the downpipe from the gutter. There'll be one at the other end as well. There's no real mention of it in the scale scenes instructions, as there is no mention of exactly how you get on with the guttering here, where this cutout is. I think the guttering needs to go all the way to the end there, excuse me, and all the way to the end here, including the thickness of the ends. But scale scenes don't make any point of that at all in the instructions, so I shall find that out when the time comes. Obviously, if you're building it exactly to the scale scenes bits, then everything will be the right size, but I'm not using their guttering, so that is going to cause me a problem or two. Anyway, it gives you some idea now how big the building actually is. If I try and move it so that the whole thing is in shot, you just about see all of that. You can see it's, in fact that goes around a bit because it's not at right angles. It's quite a large building which will house 2 tracks, and then there will be one identical in length but only 1 track wide up the other set, up at the other end of the layout. So if you've got this far, thanks for watching. I'm going to wind the video up now because I'm sure it's got quite long. And the next time you see it, I hope we'll have at least one of the buildings fully complete. So, as I say, thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon. Bye for now.